Okay, good day and welcome to Callista's bio class. Now, like I stated earlier, when I posted the 2026, that is this year's biology practical WIEX white paper. What do I mean by white paper? What I mean is the paper containing all the specimen. I remember telling you I'll come back to give you a video that would contain possible questions. Yes, possible questions that would aid you or guide you while you read. So that you don't read so much, but you read smart. Yes, what do I mean by reading smart? I simply mean I would help you or guide you to possible questions, raising possible questions that will come out from each specimen, and I will do well to answer these questions that I raise. So let's dive right in. I wish you good luck in this year's 2026 biology practical WIEC, and I also wish you success in the exam as well. That's the theory, paper 1 and 2. So let's dive right into the specimen. We have specimen A as granules in its pod, whereby the granules will be open maybe halfway. Specimen B as roasted or milled granules. Specimen C as water in a beaker. Specimen D, water and salt, that is salt solution in a beaker as well. Specimen E is sandy soil. Specimen F is alimentary canal of a small mammal. It could be rabbit or rat, or I think they specify depending on what the school can get for the students. But remember that this alimentary canal covers from the mouth to the stomach. That is, it's not the complete one. It doesn't have the intestine. What will they be asking from there? I'll keep you posted so that you know how to read. Specimen G, we have the twig or a branch that has a plant on it. We call a parasitic plant called mistletoe. I would also help you know what this plant is all about, how it fits, how and why it's called a parasitic plant, what it uses to survive. Specimen H, let's go on. We have evaporated milk. Yes, and by evaporated milk, it could be a full cream evaporated milk or a skimmed evaporated milk. Your teacher will do well to get that for you, and I will tell you possible questions that will come out from there. Specimen J, remember there's no I, so specimen J is a fresh fish. Now they did not specify whether it's a tilapia fish or a catfish, they just said a fresh fish. That's very dicey. Specimen K is a dry maize grain. I'll help you to classify that. As a grain, it's also a fruit, and I will tell you what kind of fruit. Specimen L, tomato paste. Specimen M, fresh tomato that is firm. Specimen N, rotten tomato. I will tell you the possible disease, whether it's a fungi or virus, but it's not a viral disease, it's a fungi disease. When you see a white cotton, silky cotton structure on a rotten tomato, it's a fungi. And I'll also tell you what kind of fungi it is. We call it a white mold, but I'm going to get to that. Specimen P, it's a thermometer. Specimen Q is a meter rule, and specimen R, the last specimen, is what? I know you already know, a quadrat. If you followed my YouTube shorts, you will see that I've posted this almost 7 days or a week and some days ago. Now I'm here to give you possible questions. I'll be posting the pictures of this specimen, and I'm also going to be explaining alongside the picture. I won't want this video to be lengthy, but I may try and cover specimen A and B since they are related, give you the similarity, the comparison, the possible questions, then work with specimen C and D since they are also closely related. That way you would know how to read. Tell you how to learn possible diagrams, how to label, give magnification for your drawings, how to calculate that. Also how to title your diagram. If you're asked to draw something, most of the times they tell you what to draw. From the instruction given on what to draw, you know how to title. So if you're asked draw the lateral view of specimen A, the granite in its pod, you should be able to tell them that the diagram of what you drew is the diagram of the lateral view. You don't just say diagram of a granite. You pick your title from what you were asked to draw. If you're also given a range, 8 to 10 cm or 12 to 10 cm, you also try to work with that range. And you use that range together with how you measure your specimen to get your magnification. All right, let's dive right in. I'll be right back. Okay, you can see on your screen that we have the granite before you. That's a picture. It shows the granite in the pod. Now, what type of fruit is a granite? That's a possible question. Identify specimen A. Don't just call it a granite. Call it a granite seed with inside the pod. So you could identify it as specimen A is a granite seed inside the pod if it's open. But if it's not open, just say it's a granite pod. You get a granite pod. If it's open, a granite seed inside the pod. And then what kind of fruit is the next question? Definitely they'll ask you that. What kind of fruit is specimen A? You tell them that specimen A is a true, simple, dry, indehiscent fruit. It's a simple, true, dry, indehiscent fruit. Now I'll explain. They may also ask you to give reason for your answer above. Now, the reason why it's a true fruit is that you say it's a true fruit because it was fertilized from only the word ovary. Now, a first fruit is always fertilized from the ovary as well as other floral parts. Floral parts could be the parts like the pistil and other parts, or the gymnasium, the male part, or the androcym, if the female part, the gymnasium or the androcym. So it's just keep it simple. It's a true fruit because it developed from what? Only from the ovary. It developed only from the ovary. Why is it now a simple fruit? It's a simple fruit because it developed from a monocarpous pistil or from a syncarpous pistil. Now, a syncarpous flower or monocarpous flower, what does it mean? Only one carpel, or syncarpous, fused carpel. You get, that's why it's simple. Some can also be from other parts apart from the carpel. So it's a simple fruit because it's germinated from the a superior, let's not forget that, a superior monocarpous pistil. Then why is it a dry fruit? It's a dry fruit because the pericarp. What is the pericarp? Now, the pericarp in flowering or in a flower is the wall of the ovary. It is the outermost part of the ovary that later forms the fruit. Then the inner part of the ovary is where the ovules, which later form the seed, attach to germinate. So the outer part of the ovary is called the pericarp. It forms the fruit wall, or the outer part of the fruit. You can just use the word. The pericarp is the fruit wall, or it later forms the what and develops into the what fruit. So we have the reason why it's dry is because the pericarp is hard and dry. In some, the pericarp is soft. It can be edible, like mango, berries, like tomatoes and orange. Those ones, the pericarp is not hard. But in this one, the pericarp is hard, because you can see the pod it's what the pericarp, which is the outermost part of the fruit that is developed from the fruit wall. All right, we are going into the next one. Why is it a dehiscent? It's a dehiscent fruit because when the fruit ripens or is ripe, the pericarp, which I've explained as the outermost part of the fruit, or which is developed from the fruit from the ovary wall. So that pericarp usually divides or splits through a line that is naturally created on the fruit. So the pericarp splits, or we call it a discides, to split or dicite into it splits or dicites from that line that is naturally found on the fruit. So it splits or dicites to release the pod when it's ripening. It splits. Don't forget that word. It splits to release the pod. Usually it splits from that natural line or the indication on the pod. That's why when you have a granite, like you can see in this picture, when you want to open a granite, when you want to eat it, you open it from, there's this line that is already invisible. You can see it a little bit, and then you open it from that line into two. Then you can now get the seed and eat the seed. You get, what we eat is the seed. So you open the pod, there are two lines. So those lines are where it's naturally split. But don't forget, groundnut is an underground plant. So it doesn't just split into the air like a pride of Barbados would do. You get, it's under the ground. But what it's trying to say, when you want to eventually ripen, it can open up from there. And then because it's inside the soil, it cannot really carry out explosive what's it called, splitting. All right, there are still many things to do, so let me go straight to the major things. So I've given you the type of fruit. It's a true, simple, dry, indehiscent fruit. And the reason for true, I said, is because it developed from only the ovary. Reason for simple is because it developed from a monocarpous pistil, what we call a superior monocarpous pistil. The reason for dry is because the pericarp is dry and hard, and the reason for indehiscent is because it splits into two from that natural line. Then the next one, they ask you, what kind of placentation does it have? What is placentation? In biology, placentation simply means the arrangement of the ovule, which is the seed. Because what we call seed was developed from the ovule. Ovule is O-V-U-L-E. So the ovule, when it's immature, is called ovule. When it develops into a seed. Then the ovary, which is the house that we have, or a space where this ovule is contained. So the ovary develops into the fruit, the ovule develops into the seed. So in placentation, it is simply the arrangement of the seed, which was developed from the ovule, inside the ovary, which will later form the fruit. So it's the arrangement of the ovule or the seed inside the ovary, the walls of the ovary. We have different types of placentation, but I have parietal, axial, marginal. I don't want to go into them so I don't confuse you, but for groundnuts, the placentation is marginal. They would ask you, why is your, give a reason for your answer above, why is it marginal? Now it's marginal because we have the seeds arranged on only one side of the along one side of the margins. The seed are arranged on one side or along one side of the margin. So you can say the seed, in bracket the ovule, are arranged along one side of the fruits, in brackets the ovary, because the fruit develops on the ovary, the walls of the ovary. Or then class other plants that also carry out this kind of marginal placentation are, you could list cowpea, what we call these beans that is white. We also have flamboyant flower, pride of Barbados, Delonix, there's many of them, Crotalaria rather, that's the flower, and as many as they are rather. Then another question they could ask, what type of germination does it carry out? Remember, it's a dicot. You should know that groundnut is a dicot. It has two seed leaves. All dicots carry out epigeel germination. Epigeel is E-P-I-G-E-A-L. So epigeel germination. Now they ask you give maybe 2 or 3 answers for your reason why it carries out that type of germination called epigeel. The first thing you should write is that the cotyledon or the seed leaf are carried above the soil surface, and they are carried above the soil surface by the hypocotyl. That is Hypocotyl. So it is epigeel germination because the cotyledon during germination are carried above the soil surface. They don't remain inside the ground like you see in monocots. In dicot, they are carried above the soil surface. The cotyledons are mostly the seed leaf, the leaf that they have at that stage where they are still in the form of a seed. And it's those leaves they use to carry out their first photosynthesis. We call them the first foliage leaf. They develop into the first foliage leaf. So your reason for epigeel germination is that the seed leaf is carried above the soil surface and it is carried by the epicotyl. When the epicotyl elongates and it pushes the cotyledon, which is the seed leaf, up to the extent that it gets above the soil surface. Then the man also asks you, what kind of, does it have, is it an endospermic seed or a non-endospermic seed? Now, what is an endospermic seed? An endospermic seed is any seed that can store food in a special tissue. You get, it doesn't just store the food in the cotyledon, it stores the food, extra food that will carry it out, that will last even to maturity. You get, not just during the seedling phase. So you can see it storing food, extra food, not just in the cotyledon alone, but in the special tissue. Endospermic seeds are like examples are maize. So groundnut is a non-endospermic word seed. All right, other possible questions. We'll talk about placentation, marginal, type of germination, epigyle. Now we'll be going into another likely question is outline 4 features you can see. They may ask you to bring out the seed from the pod and observe it and outline features you can see. External features are the features you can see. Do not talk about the internal features. I will explain both of them. So for the external features, we have, you'll see a seed coat. The seed coat is that purple color, as you can see in this picture. When you look at the seed, you see that there is a purple covering on that part. The seed is what we eat. So the groundnut seed is what we eat. It's usually purple or light purple for some species of groundnut. Now that seed coat or covering is usually, when you remove it, you can now see that the groundnut is white inside. But when it's covered with the seed coat, or we call it tester, it is purple in color. So what does it do? The major function of the seed coat is just to cover the inner part of the seed, where you have the cotyledon and the plumen and the radicle. So it's just to cover. Then another structure you can see as an external structure is what we call the hilum, or we call it helium. Now that helium is just a scar that you see on that at the base of the seed. You get. Now one thing you must know about a seed is gotten from the embryo. Where's the embryo gotten from? The embryo is gotten from fertilization. Fertilization of the male part and the female part gives what a zygote. After some while, the zygote develops into an embryo. The embryo is made up of some parts that are found in the seed. The embryo is made up of parts like radicle, which later develops into the roots. We call it embryonic roots. It's also made up of the plumen, Plumule. The plumen is also called the embryonic shoot because it develops into the shoots. And then you also have the hypocotyledon, which is just a mini stem. So these 3 parts, and then the cotyledon, of course, the seed leaf. These are the 3 parts that make up the seed, and the seed is inside. All these things are part of the embryo. Just like when you see a chick, or you see an egg, the egg of a mother hen. The egg inside, they have the yolk. The yolk is just like where they store food that would feed the embryo till it develops. After 21 days, it becomes a chick. So that yolk will be much or bigger in size at the early stage of the mother hen producing or laying that egg. After some days, the yolk will be reducing in size while the embryo will be increasing in size because the embryo is feeding on the yolk throughout that 21 days of incubation. So the same thing in a seed. By the time the chick is almost 21 days old and ready to use the beak to crack the eggshell and come out, the yolk would have been exhausted, and then the chick, or we won't call it embryo at this stage, can no longer feed on that has been exhausted. It needs to come out now and face the real world. So in this case, the embryo was gotten from the fertilization of the the female parts of the flower, which you already know as the pollen grain. Male drops on the female, the stigma, receives it and sends it to the style. From the style, it gets to the ovary. Fertilization occurs there. When it occurs, they start developing the oval into seed, and the ovary, which is the house that contains the oval, start developing into a fruit. Do you understand? All right. So another thing we could find is the helium, which I said is just a scar on that at the base, and it's that same scar. The helium is that same scar that you find at the base of the seed. It's that same scar that the seed, when it was at the stage of an oval, used to attach to the wall of the ovary. But when it finally wants to, it's broken off. In this case, we say that the helium is the the scar where it's attached to the wall of the ovary. Now is the pod. In the groundnut is the pod. So it's that scar that it uses to attach to the pod. Because the pod which we open is the fruit, while what we eat is the seed. Do you get it now? So it is that scar that it's actually attached, the seed attached to the pod. But when it broke off for the person to maybe eat it or plant that seed, that part where it broke off is the scar was found on the seed, and some part of it will be found on the pod. That is what it also uses to attach itself to what we call placentation attaches to the walls of the pod or the fruit, which is the pod. Then we have the micropyes, another physical or external feature we can see. I've mentioned the seed coat or the tester, I've mentioned the helium, and now I'm going to mention the micropyle. Now the micropyle is just a opening or a hole through which it's got the pollen grain. The pollen grain came in and fertilized the oval. Then it developed into a seed. Is that same micropyle? It's still a tiny hole through which it will use to get water when you want to grow that seed or germinate the seed, if you eventually want to grow it. Do you understand? So the micropyle is just a tiny hole that the pollen tube used to enter and develop and fertilize the oval. Is that same tiny hole that is found on the seed that can be used to take in water during germination. Do you get? Then what are the internal features? In case they ask you to remove the pod, the seed from the groundnut pod and open it. Now you can open that seed into two. That's why it's called a dicotyledon. When you are asked to dissect or open the pod, you are going to open it into two. Now when you open it into two, they may ask you what are the internal features you can see. That is only when you can mention three basic internal features. What are these three basic internal features? Take note though. You must see the cotyledon, which is the larger part of the seed or the embryo. Then at the base or somewhere at the tip, towards like the top rather, not even the base, you will see three other features. You see the radicle, the plumen, and the plumule and the hypocotyl. But you might not easily see the hypocotyl at that initial stage. So the basic thing you would note that you're going to see is the cotyledon and the embryo. Then the embryo is now made up of the radicle, plumen, and the plumule and the hypocotyl. Remember I've told you that the radicle grows into the roots. That's why we call it embryonic roots. At that embryonic stage, it is the roots you see. We call it embryonic roots. The plumule grows into the embryonic shoots, while the hypocotyl is just a short stem that it uses to raise it up above the soil surface by pushing the cotyledon. So the cotyledon in most cases tends to come up. All right, another thing they will ask you, what are the diseases and the pests of these specimen A? Take note, there are some diseases and pests that could affect it during growing stage, during harvesting stage, and maybe a post-harvesting stage. Let's look at some of them. The first one we have is a groundnut rosette disease virus. Groundnut rosette virus, what we call GRV. Groundnut rosette virus is always happening or affecting the groundnut pod at the early stage, and most of the times is transmitted by the insects we call aphids. It can also have symptoms like yellowing of the leaves, and if the leaves are yellow, what's the next thing? It reduces photosynthetic rates. Yeah, and when photosynthetic rates are reduced, then the size of that groundnut pod will drastically be reduced. The farmer will not get a good yield, and then if the yields are not good, what happens? You will sell at a lower cost. Are you following? So another thing is, apart from that groundnut rosette disease, which I said, take note, is a viral disease. We also have another disease, but this time around is a fungi disease. We call it early and late leaf spots. Early and late leaf spots. It's caused by a fungi, and it is not really transmitted by a pest. It can be in the soil or something. But what are the symptoms? It has dark to brown coloration on the spots rather on the leaf. These are also diseases you can see at the stages of planting and growing. Then we have the one we call rust. Yes, groundnut rust. Most of the times, anytime you hear the word rust is mostly a fungi disease. Now, rust is the way you see rust on metals, particularly iron. You know, iron is one of the metals that rust. Other metals corrode. So that rust, that is a brownish red substance you see on iron. You also see that coloration brownish red on the leaves, and you see them like spots. And when you see them, they tend to reduce photosynthetic activities. All right, so another one you can see, you have pests. What are the pests? Insect pests. We have aphids. We have termites can later affect the pods. They can eat the pods and attack the seed. But at that stage, you have aphids, you have caterpillar. Yes, they could damage the leaves also. You have thrips. That's THRIPS. Then we also have a fungi that can affect it when it has been harvested. We call that fungi Aspergillus. Yes, it's a fungi that can affect it, and if it's not well treated, it could damage it. Most of the times, what causes that fungi is when you harvest it and the soil, it's an underground plant. The leaves are above the ground while the pod is inside the ground. So when you harvest it, and you harvest it when the soil is moist or wet, you are supposed to dry it before you bag, like you store it in bags. But if you don't dry it and with those moist soil, it can now lead to that fungi if they're in the soil. Fungi we call aspergillus. So I've mentioned pests like aphids, caterpillar, thrips, and I've mentioned diseases like granite rosette viral disease, granite rust, which is a reddish brown substance on the leaf, not on the pod. We also have early leaf spots, and then I think these are basic diseases you should know. Another question they could ask you is list 4 ways to manage these pests and diseases. Of course, you'll be stating things like roast the nuts, just like we have a specimen B, roasted or milled granules. So you can roast your nuts and then store it in an airtight container. But if you don't want to, probably you want to use it for the next growing season, what do? You tend to dry your pods immediately after harvest. You sun dry on a raised platform. You sun dry. Then you can also harvest at the right time of maturity. You get, so it doesn't stay and other things start eating it up. A very good point you can also use to manage pests and diseases, what we call agronomic practices of control. What are they? Control that an agriculturist will carry out using certain methods of planting, like crop rotation. In crop rotation, you just need to plan a farmer divides the plot of land into maybe 3 or 4, and every time he rotates the plants he cultivates on a particular plot. You get, so that the diseases that are found on this plant, next year he changes it so that they will leave that particular plot, and then sometimes the soil can be replenished through crop rotation. Then we also have you try to, as much as possible, you plant disease resistant species of groundnuts so that they will reduce the spread of disease. All this method of planting are under agronomic control. Then we are going into specimen B.